Hi friend, welcome back to Running to Myself. I'm your host, Trisha Stanton. I heard something recently on a podcast that really got me thinking. The guest was talking about a book she had written, and she said, I wrote the book I needed to read all those years ago. Isn't that interesting? It made me start wondering, what would I write if I wrote the book that I needed back then? What would I tell a younger version of myself? The one walking through uncertainty, the one second guessing, the one trying so hard to get it right and not even really knowing what getting it right would mean. And then an even more useful question came up. What do I know now that I'm not tapping into? I'm sure we've all heard the phrase, hindsight is 2020, but that only actually helps if we apply what we've learned. Otherwise, it just becomes a collection of experiences that we survived without ever letting them shape how we live going forward. Or worse, our collection of experiences become our victim story that keeps us stuck. So I started reflecting and asking myself, what have I learned through the hard things? What patterns have I seen in my own thinking? What actually helped me move through those seasons? And doing that from a neutral state of mind felt really empowering. It kept me out of that place of, why did that happen? Or I wish I had known. And it kept me in the place of, I do know something now. And that matters. You see, we don't always pause to recognize just how far we've come. And I'm not unique in this. I'm sure it applies to you too. You've already lived through things that required strength. You've already figured things out. You've already grown. The question is, are you using that growth or are you leaving it in the past? I find this useful when I'm doing something new. When something feels unfamiliar or uncertain or just plain hard, instead of trying to create confidence out of thin air, I borrow it from something that I've already done. And often I'll think about training for my first marathon because at the time that felt really big. It was unknown. And even all these years later, I still remember how overwhelmed I felt by that. There were plenty of moments when I didn't know if I could do it. But I followed the plan, I stayed consistent, I kept showing up, and eventually I crossed the finish line. So now when I'm facing something that feels similar, something new, something stretching, I don't tell myself, oh, this is different, this is harder. Instead, I remind myself, you've done hard before, you've followed a process before, you've walked in the unknown before. And that simple shift brings me back into belief. Not hype, not pressure, just belief. And just enough belief to take the next step. And that's really all we need on most days. We don't need the whole plan. We don't need a guarantee. We need just enough belief to take the next step. Here's another question I come back to in times of uncertainty, and this one is also one of my favorites. It's so good for times when there doesn't seem to be a clear path forward. When I feel stuck or unsure or caught up in overthinking, I ask myself, what would the 80-year-old version of me say right now? I love this question because it clears out so much noise. When I ask this question, the little distractions, the unnecessary pressure, the need to get it perfect, those things fall away. Because the 80-year-old version of me isn't worried about the small things. She's looking at the big picture. She's thinking about how I lived, how I showed up, what I chose. And when I ask that question, the answers are usually simple. Not always easy, but simple. Keep going. Say the necessary thing. Try it. Don't wait. Be present. Let it matter. And sometimes stop overcomplicating this. So here's what I want to offer you today. A couple of questions you can carry with you. Not as something to overthink, but as something to return to. If you wrote the book you most needed to read, what would it say? What truths would you include? What would you remind yourself of? What would you simplify? And if you could sit down with the 80-year-old version of yourself, what would she tell you today? Not from fear or urgency, but from the perspective of a life well and fully lived. You don't need to become someone new to move forward. You don't need a completely different plan. You just need to access what you already know and trust it enough to take your next step. If this resonated with you and you're realizing that there are patterns in your thinking that you want to understand more clearly, this is exactly the kind of work I do in coaching. We look at what's already there, your thoughts, your patterns, your experiences, and we start using them in a way that actually moves you forward. You don't have to figure it all out on your own. You can book a free consultation with me using the link in the show notes. Or if you're not quite ready for that, you can join my email list where I share weekly tools just like this, simple ways to think differently and move forward with more clarity. And I'll leave you with this. You've already lived through hard things that shaped you. Don't leave that wisdom behind. Use it and keep taking your next right step. I'll see you next time.